Flashpoint with moderator Kevin Ogle, along with Mike Turpen and Kirk Humphreys.
Good morning and welcome to Flashpoint. Well, they're at it again. I'm talking about John McCain and Ted Cruz, two Republicans who don't particularly like each other. This all centers around comments that Cruz made at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. We'll be talking about that. The mayor's election is over. Did it go the way you wanted it to go? We're going to analyze that here on Flashpoint. And what do we do about Putin, Russia, and the Ukraine and all the machinations going on now with Vladimir Putin? We're going to get the answers to that. Not only that, but maybe we'll find out who's going to run really strong in the presidential primaries on the Republican side, because our guest is Oklahoma Congressman Tom Cole, back on the program to tell us what's going on.
Quite a range. I mean, from Putin to the Oklahoma City mayor's race.
We're covering it all, buddy.
You are.
All the PowerPoints in the whole world, Tom.
Welcome back. And
great to be here.
And you, let's start off with him, if you don't mind. All about you.
Sure.
You look seriously, maybe not, at the U.S. Senate race. There's two Senate races in Oklahoma. You could have picked one of them. But
Tom, I've got to say, when that came up, you were at the top of the list, and I and a lot of other people thought you would have made a strong run for it if not been the leader.
Well,
so
you're kind to say that. Somebody asked me how long I thought about it. I said someplace between 8 and 12 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
Look, I think, number one, I'm very privileged. I've got a great district. I'm in a great spot in the House. I'm on appropriations. I'm now a chairman of the smallest of the appropriation subcommittees, but three guys ahead of me are either running for other office or retiring. So
that's a tough spot to get, to have in Oklahoma to be they call them a cardinal.
Yeah.
And all the appropriation bills have to go through one of those 12 people.
You really do.
We don't want you to leave the Congress.
And, well, and, you know, again, that's up to people in the 4th District. And I can give you an exact count in a few months of how many that do want to. And there'll be thousands of them. And that's okay.
Give or take.
But the other thing, honestly, I looked at the Senate, and as a freshman senator, you got to wait a long time. We've got at least 2 candidates, now 3, that are considerably younger than me. They got the time to build up the kind of seniority I think it takes to be effective. Look how effective Jim Inhofe is for Oklahoma. That didn't just happen. He was in the House. He's built up the time in the Senate since 1994. He's the top Republican on armed services. That's a huge advantage in a state that has Tinker and Fort Sill and Vance, Altus, and McAllister. So I just thought, we got good candidates. I'm not the one that you don't need me to win. And to me, it made more sense for me to stay where I was at. I suspect Frank Lucas went through a very similar decision-making process. We wouldn't have a farm bill this year if it wasn't for Frank Lucas.
Handicap the Senate race real quickly.
Well, I'm going to try and be very even-handed because these are all my friends, honestly.
Yeah.
Even
Randy Brogdon?
Yeah, I would. Look, he's my friend.
Okay, go football.
Look, right now, the advantages, I would say, demography and geography favor Langston. He's in the biggest Republican area in the state. Well-known, good candidate, good team, good record to run on. TW has got some advantages of his own. I think he's a really exciting candidate. He's an historic candidate as both African and Native American. He's a Speaker of the House, so you see an infrastructure. 47 House members endorsed him. You know, I think he's going to get some national support. I think you're already seeing that. And then Brogdon, I think, really complicates the race and probably extends it. He probably forces a runoff. His strength is in Tulsa.
End of August.
Got 39%, you know, in a race against Mary Fallin. And Governor Fallin, as we all know, has never lost a race. That was actually one of the stronger performances against her. So you got 3 pretty good candidates. You're going to have pretty good tussle.
Now, for people who don't know Randy Brogdon, who is it?
He's a former state senator from the Tulsa area, ran for governor 4 years ago against, in an open seat, so really wasn't against Governor Fallin. Considered running again this year. I think it actually begun doing that. And then I think when the Senate seat came open, that's unexpected. None of us wanted this to happen. Obviously, we would prefer Tom Coburn be in good enough health to stay all the way through. You know, he saw an opportunity there, and I think he'll sort of try to emerge as the Tea Party type candidate of the 3.
And if he draws enough, you feel like, being a longtime political consultant, is not only a politician, that if Brogdon gets in, that he'll draw enough away that there won't be a clear winner in the primary, and Shannon and Langford will have to go. Now, we're just saying Shannon and Langford right now.
Two of them will.
Two of the three will go on.
We don't know which three.
We don't know.
Two,
we don't know. I think James has the best chance of absolutely being in that too. I mean, you know, I think he starts out with a big lead. So I would think, you know, in some senses, the race is, you know, if there's going to be a runoff, second place isn't a bad place to be in a runoff. And historically in Oklahoma, David Bourne was in second place in a runoff. Dave McCurdy was in second place in a runoff. Frank Lucas was in second place in a runoff.
Ernest Istook
was in second place. Yeah, it's a pretty normal. So you get into a runoff situation, the whole ball game changes, because usually everybody that wasn't with number one is mad at number one. So number two is a pretty good place.
Why isn't Langford on television yet? We see a lot of T.W. Shannon spots.
Well, I think he probably felt he didn't have to. You know, he starts out with a name ID lead and what have you, and I think, you know, if you're T.W. Shannon, you've got to instantly project that message to the broader electorate about who you are and get in there. And you particularly want to be in the Tulsa market where James won't be as well known. And again, T.W. knows an awful lot of people in central Oklahoma. He worked for J.C. Watts, worked for me, so particularly in the Cleveland County area. But you better show them that you're serious and you can get in.
Yeah. Tom, you and I really got to know each other well 16 years ago. When you ran my campaign, you were my consultant for mayor. And
How'd you do?
I won going away, and this guy is the brightest political mind in the state of Oklahoma.
Was he expensive?
And darn well worth it.
Like Magnavox, the old commercial.
I paid a lot and got more than my money's worth. But
Oklahoma City got their money's worth out of that race.
Talk a little bit about the mayor's race that just ended.
About a minute and a half.
You know, it was actually a pretty extraordinary campaign. I mean, look, Mick Cornett deserves a lot of kudos, and I think this city feels good about itself. I would actually argue it's had three terrific mayors in a row, Ron Norick, you, and now Mick Cornett. But it's a reflection both on his leadership. You know, he was mayor when the Thunder got here, had a lot to do with that. Mayor in an era of prosperity. So I always thought he was going to be a very strong candidate, and honestly, he's just tough to beat. You know, why would you throw out a guy when things are going as good as they are for Oklahoma City right now?
We had Ed Shadid on last week, Councilman Ed Shadid, who ran against Mick Cornett.
Got beat 2-1.
Had some issues that he had to address early on in the campaign, which a lot of people think that may have hurt him. If he doesn't have to address those personal issues, does he run a stronger race?
Well, it probably helps, but I think this was more about Mick's strength than it was about the other candidates' challenges. Look, he was always ahead in every poll. He was always going to be strong. His numbers over several elections are actually very consistent if you look at them.
Getting better.
I mean, you know, yeah, you're really attacking a guy that's an institution, and again, whose political success is associated with Oklahoma's city's economic success and cultural revival. So, I mean, I think the lesson here is think twice before you run against Mick Cornett for mayor. I mean, as long as this city's doing well, it's not going to be inclined to throw him out.
But what about Putin?
All right, what
about Russia? What about the Ukraine?
What about John McCain and Ted Cruz?
What about taking a break?
Okay. You win. You win.
He wins again.
We'll be back on Flashpoint. You're going to hear from John McCain, not happy with Ted Cruz and his own party coming up next.
What about love?
John McCain not happy?
No, I know. The 4th District. Just for those who don't know, a lot of people don't know sometimes, U.S. representatives run every 2 years, so they run every election cycle. U.S. senators run every 6 years. So Tom's up for re-election, and as we talked about earlier, he's going to get find out how well he's doing in his district when they go
back
to the
home.
polls.
You bet.
Small ball.
Tom, you've been in Congress. You're in your 7th term? Sixth term.
Be running for myself.
And you've done awfully well. You're on some high-powered, like we said, you're a cardinal.
Cardinal on appropriations, on the Rules Committee, which is the smallest, most exclusive committee, and I sit on the Budget Committee as well, and I'm a deputy whip, so it's been a good, good
run so far. So far. Miles to go before we sleep.
Yeah.
Before we go to Russia, take us to Israel. You were in Israel a week before last.
Extraordinary trip. Had a chance to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, with the top ministers in his government, with top Israeli defense and intelligence people. We visited the Golan Heights of the Syrian border. Actually saw an artillery barrage underway between government and opposition forces over there. You see how dangerous that border is and how many different groups were on it. went up to the border with Lebanon, which, again, pretty sobering up there, and down to the Gaza Strip, where we saw a terror tunnel that had been built for a terrorist attack that had been found, actually, by, of all things, a Bedouin tribesman, Arab tribesman in the Israeli army, who sort of do what Indians used to do in the American army. They're the best trackers and the best folks, and he's an Israeli citizen, volunteer for the Israeli army. So it was amazing. But if you're in Israel, you're surrounded by volcanoes that are blowing up on every border.
Yes,
Syria is literally eroding. I don't think we'll ever see it reconstituted. And you also have talks beginning. The United States is trying to broker a two-state solution with Palestine. Secretary Kerry's been heavily involved in that.
How is he doing?
Honestly, I think it's too early to tell, but he has been very active. I think very impressive in his sheer energy. And then you have the Iranian talks underway, which is a life and death matter from an Israeli standpoint, because the last thing they can afford is Iranian nuclear capability, let alone nuclear weapons. So a lot of very tense time in Israel, and yet the country's doing great. The economy's going
Talk about missile defense in Israel, because that's an everyday
It is an everyday reality. They're ringed with countries that have these cheap Katyusha missiles that they can rain down on them. The Israelis have developed, we visited actually a company called Rafael, which is a government-owned arms company in Israel that does some of the best high-tech stuff in the world.
Do we help them?
We not only help them, we deployed the system that actually is saving an enormous number of lives. We had so many thank yous, unbelievable. But this company developed something called the Iron Dome.
When you say we, who do you mean?
I mean the United States government.
Okay.
We actually paid for they developed the technology on their own.
I didn't know if maybe it was a company in Oklahoma that did that.
No, and it was a national, and we give about $3 billion a year in military aid.
With a B, $3 billion.
Yeah, I know it's huge, but they're the only democracy. They're a very reliable ally, and it's been it's helped keep the peace in the region. And war in the Middle East very expensive for us.
Yeah,
the price of oil goes up.
$3 billion is nothing.
That's when the Arab oil boycott came, was after the Yom Kippur War. So believe me, the United States has deep interest in stability in the region insofar as we can foster it.
You're a Democrat. You are a Democrat, and you guys have had the White House now for, it'll be 2 terms.
Way too long. Way too long.
We just got started. We're going to have 2 terms.
Defend yourself.
Yeah, defend yourself. 2 terms of Obama and 2 terms of Hillary Clinton. Is that the question?
That could happen.
But the question is, the president and Vladimir Putin right now, what's going on there?
Well,
and what can we do there, Tom? I mean, nobody wants to put boots on the ground.
Well, I think you have to be fair to there are limitations to what we can do. There are some things that we shouldn't have done, but look, I agree. Look, we didn't see Eisenhower go to Hungary in '56. We didn't see Johnson go to Prague in '68. We didn't see George W. Bush go to Georgia, in the last 3 months. So the military option is not strong. But the things that you can do militarily and then economically, there's 2 or 3 things. We actually have a relationship with the Ukrainians. They sent troops to help us in Iraq. We should beef up our training missions. We should make it apparent that whatever weapons they need, they can get. 2, and I think the president's going to do this, we can send a couple of frigates into the Black Sea as a show of support. And 3, and I think much more effectively, that this president canceled anti-missile defense systems with Poland and Czechoslovakia. Yeah. That's what catches the Russians' attentions. We should have never done that. I've been to Poland and Czechoslovakia after that. I can tell you they felt we'd let them down. I think reopening negotiations for those kind of facilities in those countries on, they're next to Russia, really important to do. Economically, Russia has 3 state banks. We can do sanctions. We ought to certainly not go to the and I'm sure we won't go to the G8 meetings that were scheduled for Sochi, and we ought to talk about getting the Russians out of the G8. I mean, this is supposed to be a league of democratic powers, and they're busy dismembering a sovereign state on their border.
Talk about Putin specifically. What's your take on him?
Have you ever met him?
I've never had the opportunity to meet him. he's look.
He's a former KGB agent, for one thing.
Yeah, I think a couple of presidents have misjudged him at various points along the way, Republican and Democrat. But he's one tough customer. He believes in the greatness of Russia. This is a guy who said the greatest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now think of that. This is a century with 2 world wars and the Holocaust, and we think that was the great disaster. I actually think it's one of the great things that ever happened.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, I wish somebody had told him at the time, look, you'd still be a colonel in the KGB. You would be president of Russia.
But it seems like the only thing he respects is power.
It is the only thing he respects. He's kind of, you know, inside of his country, he's pretty thuggish politically, but I think he's also restored a sense of Russian pride, and so I think he is genuinely popular amongst, you know, the majority of the Russian people. And look, I think he outthought us in Syria, where he backed the president down and projected himself back in the region. I think he's just done it again. So I think you sort of get the sense that, again, as one of my colleagues put it, you know, they're playing chess, we're playing marbles. This guy knows what he's doing, and he needs to face a much more skillful and, frankly, much more resolute America than we've been in dealing with it.
Comment on the Olympics.
Well, we don't have time for that, but when we come back, we're going to talk about your party. Your party, a couple of them in turmoil over CPAC. We'll be right back here on Flashpoint.
CPAC.
I'm Cole from the 4th District here in the state of Oklahoma. We've been talking about a lot of things, and I didn't mean to cut my friend Mike Turpen off about the Olympics.
That's impossible to do.
The Olympics
We've tried over and over.
The Olympics were on NBC. I was just promoting the station. Go ahead.
I appreciate that.
Putin looked good. I hate to say it, but go ahead.
During the Olympics.
John the ice skaters look better, though, I'll tell you.
Russian ice skaters. See ya.
Senator John McCain from Arizona not happy with a senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, about what he said about 3 of the past presidential candidates for the Republicans. One of them happened to be John McCain. Cruz said something about that during the CPAC, and so Mr. McCain decided he would talk about it too. This is what he said on MSNBC.
Roll tape.
All of us remember President Dole and President McCain and President Romney. Now, look, those are good men. They're decent men. But when you don't stand and draw a clear distinction, when you don't stand for principle, Democrats celebrate.
I think he's saying that you, Bob Dole, and Mitt Romney did not stand for principle.
Well, I spoke to Ted Cruz. He and I have a cordial relationship about this, and he can say what he wants to about me, and he can say anything he wants to, I think, about Mitt. Mitt's capable of taking it. But when he throws Bob Dole in there, I wonder if he thinks that Bob Dole stood for principle on that hilltop in Italy when he was so gravely wounded and left part of his body there fighting for our country. Bob Dole is such a man of honor and integrity and principle. I hope that Ted Cruz will apologize to Bob Dole, because that has crossed a line that, to me, leaves the realm of politics and discourse that we should have in America.
John McCain says that Ted Cruz should apologize to Bob Dole for that comment.
Well, look, I don't think it's ever a smart strategy to try to advance yourself by tearing down members of your own party. And these are 3 great Americans. You can agree with them or disagree with them, but I agree with Senator McCain. You know, Bob Dole, you know, carried wounds and has carried them all of his adult life that he received standing up for this country in combat. Senator McCain was too modest to mention he spent 5 years at Hanoi Hilton, broken back,
and carries some of those
wounds. And look, I'm very proud of Mitt Romney. He looks awfully smart about Russia today. I don't think the president would make much fun of as who his main geopolitical opponent is. So these are 3 terrific guys. They've served their country well. They've held a variety of positions. So I don't think they ought to be attacked. And I think as Republicans, we have to get past this idea of thinking we're losing because Republicans, you know, aren't standing up for principle. Every single Republican voted against the Affordable Health Care Plan before Ted Cruz ever arrived. Everyone against the stimulus before he ever got there. Our problem is we need more Republicans, not that there's something wrong with the Republicans we have. And that's how you expand parties.
Is Ted Cruz banned for the Republican Party? We're about to run out of time with Tom.
I wouldn't make that judgment. He's a brilliant communicator, and he has. But sometimes when you're new, you don't understand. There have been people here fighting for principles for a long time, and that you've benefited from their fight. Every American benefited from Bob Dole and John McCain, let alone what every Republican's benefited from their careers.
Talking Republican, look forward a couple of years to talk about the presidential race.
Give me 30, 45 seconds on who you think
most wide open race of my lifetime. No favorite, and so there's going to be surprises along the way. I don't think anybody from Washington is in a strong position because Washington's unpopular. I would say Rand Paul would be the only one that could break through. I'd look to the governors, and the dark horse to me right now would be Scott Walker from Wisconsin, great conservative record. I think he plays well. But John Kasich from Ohio, that's a swing state. There's a couple of outsiders, former governors. I would never rule out Jeb Bush or Mike Huckabee. I think they are both very legitimate candidates if they decided to run. But look, at the end of the day, it is going to be a scramble on the Republican side. I mean, our friends the Democrats are going through a boring coronation over there. We're going to actually have an exciting campaign.
That's right.
I actually think that will help us ultimately.
We're switching sides. We got a new sponsor on the show. Tom and Judy loves travel stops. They started 50 years ago in Watauga. I know you're good friends with them. Comment on them because Tom and Judy think very highly of you.
Oh, gosh, they epitomize what you want every Oklahoman to be. I mean, they're not only successful, but they give back over and over. And, of course, as a Chickasaw, I'm awfully proud of Tom Love. That's a very prominent Chickasaw family. But much more importantly, they're a great Oklahoman, great American family. Great company.
Yeah.
Our guest has been U.S. Representative Tom Cole. Back on the program, we always appreciate his insights. Whether you agree with it or not, you have to admit he's definitely got the ear to the ground in Washington right now and in the state as well. We'll be back to wrap things up with you on Flashpoint right after this.
Tom Cole.
Back on Flashpoint, our closing moments now. You were out at a really fine institution in western Oklahoma.
Southwestern Oklahoma State University. Randy Butler's the president, doing a fine job. Jimmy Harrell's the chairman of the Higher Ed Regents. He hosted us. Brian Adler was our logistics. Mayor Mike Brown, been there 10 years as mayor. His wife, Debbie.
Good man.
Yeah. He talked about you, in fact. Yeah. He said he taught you everything. No, you taught him. No, I can't. Mike Brown's married, wife Debbie. James South, these are my dinner guests. He's the provost. Janice handles all the music on campus. Tom Fagan, executive vice president. His wife Cindy, she handles all the libraries in town. And guess who's coming there on April 3rd?
Who?
Bill Cosby's coming to Weatherford, Oklahoma.
Mike, Southwestern is known as the pharmacy school of the state of Oklahoma. This is their 75th anniversary of that college. Great college pharmacy. Wow.
Now think about that.
75 years.
75th anniversary, and they're real proud of Wade Christensen out of Thomas, Oklahoma. Got a scholarship to Southwestern.
The first gentleman.
The first gentleman, but he ended up at OSU. Go figure.
See you next week.